Buckingham Palace has said King Charles spent a short period of time in hospital today after experiencing the temporary side effects of his cancer treatment.
My father has always understood that people of all faiths, all backgrounds, and all communities deserve to be celebrated and supported.
A somber silence has fallen over the United Kingdom tonight as Prince William has confirmed the news the nation feared was coming. After weeks of growing concern and speculation surrounding King Charles's health, the prince's statement has brought heartbreaking clarity. His words, calm but filled with emotion, have left the country holding its breath. The words spread like wildfire through social media, living rooms, and even the echoing halls of Buckingham Palace. For months, speculation had been building. People had noticed the king's frail public appearances, his sudden absences, the whispered talk of ongoing treatment. But this time was different. The confirmation didn't come from palace aides or official press releases. It came directly from his son, the future king, his voice carrying a quiet sorrow that no formal statement could conceal. Outside the palace gates, the atmosphere was heavy, uncertain, unlike anything seen since the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Crowds began to gather, clutching flowers and phones, unsure whether to offer prayers or brace for the inevitable. The palace remained eerily silent, its windows closed, its flags still. Reporters lined the mall, cameras fixed on the palace facade, waiting for any sign, any update. Across the ocean, news outlets replayed William's brief words again and again as the world held its breath, waiting to hear what would come next. "My father's condition is stable," Prince William said softly, "but his illness is incurable. We are cherishing the time we have together." Those two words, incurable and cherishing, were all it took for the world to understand the gravity of the situation. For months, King Charles's health had been the subject of quiet speculation following his cancer diagnosis in early 2024. Buckingham Palace had continued to release calm, carefully crafted statements, filled with words like optimism, rest, and resilience. But behind the palace walls, whispers told a different story. Treatments had taken a heavier toll than anyone outside could imagine. In public, the king carried himself with dignity, smiling, waving, and fulfilling his royal duties. He continued to meet ambassadors, attend briefings, and sign official documents. Yet each appearance seemed to leave him visibly more drained, his once energetic demeanor slowly fading. Now, after months of uncertainty and speculation, it was Prince William who finally stepped forward to speak the truth the world had been dreading. To understand the weight of this moment, it helps to remember who King Charles once was. Decades ago, he was the picture of vigor, the athletic heir who loved polo, gardening, and long hikes through the Scottish Highlands. Fitness wasn't just a hobby for him, it was part of his identity, a statement that royal life could be both active and meaningful. He would rise before dawn, spend hours on horseback, and shrug off bruises and rain with quiet determination. Those who knew him then described a man of stubborn strength, someone who refused to show weakness, even when he was hurting. That unshakable pride began to show its first cracks in 1998, when Charles underwent knee surgery after persistent pain made his royal duties increasingly difficult. It was a simple arthroscopic procedure, routine for athletes. But for the public, it was the first time they saw a glimpse of his vulnerability. Then, in 2003, came a hernia operation, another small but sobering reminder of age catching up. Both times, Charles returned to work almost immediately. He smiled for cameras, joked with photographers, and shook hands with hospital staff as if nothing had happened. Yet, behind the smiles, those close to him noticed a quiet shift. He had begun to think differently about his body, about what it meant to endure, and what it meant to age under the world's watchful eye. Over the years, there were other minor health scares. In 2008, doctors removed a benign growth from his nose. He suffered several falls during polo matches, some bad enough to cause concussions and bruises. Once, he was thrown from his horse with such force that doctors feared a serious head injury, but Charles insisted on finishing the game. That defiant attitude became his hallmark, duty above discomfort, tradition above self. It was the same determination that would later keep him standing before cameras long after doctors urged him to rest. For Charles, the crown was never just an inheritance. It was a calling, a sacred responsibility to be carried no matter the personal cost. Then came 2020, the year that tested everyone. When Buckingham Palace announced that Charles had tested positive for COVID-19, the nation collectively held its breath. He was 71, an age considered high risk, but his case was thankfully mild, and his recovery was quick. Isolated at his home in Scotland, he continued to work through video calls, reading daily briefings, and staying involved in public affairs. To the outside world, it was further proof of his resilience, the image of a monarch who refused to slow down. But those closest to him began to notice subtle changes, small signs that beneath the surface, something was quietly shifting. The signs began subtly, a touch more fatigue, shorter public appearances, and a growing dependence on aids. At the time, it wasn't alarming, but in hindsight, it was the beginning of something deeper, the quiet onset of a battle no one wanted to name. In early 2024, Buckingham Palace issued an unusually detailed statement. King Charles would undergo treatment for an enlarged prostate. The openness was praised, seen as a refreshing shift toward transparency. The procedure went smoothly, and the king appeared cheerful when leaving the hospital, waving to the crowd with his usual grace. But just a few weeks later, everything changed. Follow-up tests revealed something unexpected, something far more serious. In February, the palace confirmed what many had feared. A form of cancer had been discovered. They did not disclose the exact type, which only deepened public concern and speculation. For the first time, the monarch of the United Kingdom faced an adversary he could not command, control, or outwork. From that moment on, the pattern became familiar: hospital visits, brief stays, and cautiously worded updates. Each statement from the palace emphasized optimism, calling treatments routine or precautionary. But as the months went on, the strain became increasingly visible. The king appeared thinner, his complexion pale, his once brisk energy noticeably diminished. His public engagements grew shorter, though he refused to withdraw from his duties. He continued to meet the Prime Minister weekly, review documents, and deliver brief addresses to the nation. Yet those close to him admitted that, behind closed doors, he was often exhausted. Now, with Prince William's recent confirmation that his father's illness is incurable, the truth has finally surfaced. It happened during a charity event in London. William stood at the podium, his expression composed yet heavy with emotion. As cameras flashed, a hush swept over the audience. "My father has faced his illness with the courage we have always known him for," he said softly. "But we have reached a stage where we must accept that some battles are not meant to be won, only met with grace." The room fell utterly silent. Those words, simple, heartfelt, and devastating, spread faster than any official announcement ever could. It was the first time in decades that a royal had spoken so openly about mortality. Not since the tragedy of Princess Diana had the public heard such raw honesty. The reaction was immediate. Messages of support flooded the palace. Outside Windsor Castle, people gathered, lighting candles and laying flowers. Even longtime critics of the monarchy found themselves expressing sympathy. For many across Britain, King Charles had come to symbolize stability after Queen Elizabeth's passing, a living bridge between tradition and change. Now, as his health declined, it felt to many like the quiet closing of an era. Prince William's decision to speak out was widely praised, both brave and deeply compassionate. Yet behind the emotion, his words also carried quiet political weight. They signaled that the transition of power, in practice if not in title, had already begun. Privately, those close to the royal family say King Charles has faced this chapter with calm acceptance. In recent weeks, he has reportedly recorded personal messages, updated letters, and met with the Archbishop of Canterbury to discuss his final wishes. Those who have seen him describe a man who is reflective rather than fearful, focused on meaning, not regret. He has spoken about legacy, about leaving behind not just a reign, but a renewed sense of purpose for the monarchy itself. Like monarchs before him, he has outlined what palace aides describe as his last wishes, not as legal directives, but as moral guidance. History is rich with such gestures. Queen Victoria requested to be buried in white, wearing her wedding veil and holding a locket containing Prince Albert's portrait. King George V urged his successors to keep the monarchy humble and close to the people. King George VI, in his final conversation with the young Elizabeth, advised her to remain calm and steady, no matter the storm. Charles, ever mindful of that lineage, is said to have shared three final hopes: that the monarchy continues to modernize, that his sons reconcile, and that Britain never forgets the humanity behind its crown. It is both a personal plea and a royal blueprint, and that first wish, modernization, has already taken root. Under King Charles's leadership, the monarchy has become leaner, more focused, and more transparent, striving to adapt to a changing world while preserving the dignity of its past. William and Catherine have become the new face of King Charles's vision for a modern monarchy. Their warmth, accessibility, and genuine commitment to causes like mental health, early childhood development, and the environment have redefined what the royal family represents. William's Earthshot Prize and Catherine's Early Childhood Initiative are widely viewed as natural extensions of the king's ideals, a monarchy that exists to serve rather than to rule. Catherine, in particular, has emerged as a figure of quiet strength, echoing the grace and composure once embodied by Queen Elizabeth II. Her calm presence throughout the king's illness has earned deep public admiration. Balancing royal duties with motherhood and her own recent health challenges, she has become a symbol of modern royal womanhood, dignified yet relatable, compassionate yet strong. Those close to the king say he often expresses immense pride in her, affectionately calling her the steady star of the next generation. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla has taken on many of the king's responsibilities in recent months. She has hosted receptions, welcomed foreign dignitaries, and even presided over ceremonial events in his place. Her poise has been remarkable, especially considering the years of public scrutiny she once endured. Insiders describe her as the king's anchor, reading to him, praying with him, ensuring he rests when he insists on working. Her quiet devotion has softened long-held opinions and transformed her into an unexpected emblem of loyalty and endurance. Then there is Princess Anne, the family's unshakable constant. Tireless and devoted, she continues to carry out hundreds of engagements each year, reflecting the same sense of duty instilled by her mother, the late Queen. Within the palace, she is said to have become William's informal advisor, guiding him through the delicate process of stepping into his father's role. Her work ethic and level-headedness have made her indispensable during this uncertain time. Yet amid all the royal resilience, one absence remains deeply felt: Prince Harry. The king's younger son continues to live thousands of miles away, estranged from the institution that once defined his life. Though there have been small signs of healing, a few private phone calls and a brief visit following the diagnosis, the relationship remains fragile. Sources close to the palace say the king often speaks of his sons with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Two sons, two paths, one hope. That hope, insiders say, is reconciliation. Harry's story is both painful and pivotal. His departure from royal life in 2020 was meant to bring him peace, yet it ignited years of controversy. His interviews, his memoir, and ongoing legal battles only deepened the rift. And even now, as his father faces illness, the question lingers whether the wounds of the past can still be healed before time runs out. But now, as his father's health declines, quiet whispers suggest that even Prince Harry feels the old pull of duty once more. He's torn, one insider shared. He wants to be there for his father, but he also knows that his return could shift the focus. It could overshadow the moment. Whether he will make it back in time remains one of the monarchy's most delicate and emotional questions. Meanwhile, Prince William has stepped fully into the role of acting monarch, in every way except title. He chairs state meetings, attends daily briefings, and oversees the steady rhythm of the crown's work. Yet behind his composed demeanor, those close to him say the strain is immense. Watching his father slowly fade while preparing to take his place is a burden few could envy. He's trying to be both the Prince of Wales and the son of a dying king, one aide confided. That's a balance no one can truly prepare for. Now the nation finds itself asking the question once unthinkable: what happens next? Could King Charles choose to abdicate? Could Britain see a living monarch pass the crown before death? History offers only one modern parallel: Edward VIII's abdication in 1936, when he relinquished the throne for love. But that was a choice of the heart, not one born of illness. For Charles to step down, Parliament would need to pass a new abdication act written specifically for him. Legal experts say it's possible, but highly unlikely. Those who know the king best say he views his reign as sacred, a duty to be fulfilled until his final breath. A more probable path lies in existing tradition, the Regency Acts, which allow appointed counselors of state, including Prince William and Queen Camilla, to carry out royal duties on the monarch's behalf. This quiet transition has already begun. William now signs certain documents, presides over investitures, and represents the crown on international visits. It's a careful balance, one of continuity and respect, ensuring the monarchy remains stable while the king conserves his strength. As the days unfold, the world watches not just a royal institution in transition, but a father and son living through an unspoken goodbye. Cameras have captured William leaving hospital visits, his expression composed yet unmistakably heavy. Dark glasses shield his eyes, but the grief beneath them is unmistakable. For the public, the feeling is inescapable: that an era is gently coming to an end, that the man who waited 70 years to be king may not reign for much longer. Inside Buckingham Palace, quiet preparations are already underway. Documents are being updated, ceremonial plans refined, and protocols rehearsed behind closed doors. Yet even in these moments of royal practicality, there lingers a profound tenderness, the human ache of a family bracing for goodbye. Palace staff quietly share glimpses of the king's daily life, how he still insists on writing personal thank-you notes, how he asks each morning about the gardens, the weather, and the state of the world beyond his window. His reign, though brief, has carried deep meaning, defined by compassion and a quiet effort to bridge the ancient and the modern, the ceremonial and the sincere. For Prince William, the path ahead is both clear and heavy. He will become king sooner than anyone expected, inheriting not just a throne, but the immense responsibility of healing both a family and a nation. His tone in public, calm, empathetic, and resolute, already reflects the man and monarch he is becoming. As one royal historian observed, the crown has already begun to rest on his shoulders. And so Britain stands once again at the threshold of change. The image of King Charles, frail yet dignified, raising a gentle hand from the car window, will remain etched in the national memory. William's voice, steady but tinged with emotion, has given this moment its final shape. The monarchy, like the man who leads it, is mortal. Yet within that mortality lies its most human strength: endurance. Whether King Charles reigns for months or for years longer, his legacy is already secure, written in service, in family, and in the quiet courage of facing the end with grace. In the days that followed, the United Kingdom seemed to pause. The rhythm of daily life slowed, as if the very air around Buckingham Palace had grown heavier with expectation. Across the country, people gathered in silence at royal residences: Sandringham, Windsor, Balmoral, each place a piece of the king's long story of duty and devotion. Outside Clarence House, bouquets lined the pavement. Many carried handwritten notes: "Thank you for your grace. For king and country, always." The palace guards, stoic as ever, stood watch beneath a sky that seemed thick with history. That week, the Prime Minister paid a private visit to the king, a meeting described as brief, but deeply moving. No official details were released, only a statement affirming that His Majesty remained fully informed on all matters of state. But within political circles, word quietly spread that the conversation had been less about government and more about legacy, about ensuring stability when the inevitable moment arrived. Those close to the king say his words were calm yet resolute. The crown endures. It always has, and it always will. Inside his private quarters, the king now spends his days surrounded by books, letters, and soft music. His beloved dogs rest near the window, while Queen Camilla reads aloud, poetry, scripture, and sometimes passages he's chosen himself. Visitors describe a man at peace, not through denial, but through acceptance, a serenity born from the knowledge that he has given his life to service, and that the crown, as he once said, will endure long after him. "He has made his peace with time," one aide said softly. "He knows the world will move on. He just hopes it moves on kindly." That summer of 2025, the royal family gathered quietly at Balmoral. Prince William arrived with Catherine and their children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, for what aides described as a private visit. The children played on the lawns, laughing and chasing each other across the grass, blissfully unaware of the quiet weight that lingered over the adults. For William, the visit carried a bittersweet note. He knew this might be one of the last times his children would see their grandfather as they knew him, warm, humorous, and endlessly curious. King Charles had insisted they come, wanting to show them the gardens one last time, the same gardens he had tended and loved for decades. That evening, father and son shared a private meeting that lasted nearly 2 hours. No cameras, no courtiers, just the two of them, and the fading light of the Scottish dusk. Later, those close to the family said William emerged with tears in his eyes but a calm strength in his voice. He said his father told him he was proud, a confidant recalled, and that everything that needed to be said had been said. Meanwhile, speculation surrounded Prince Harry's return. Paparazzi crowded Heathrow, scanning each arriving flight for a glimpse of him. For days, nothing happened. Then one evening, without announcement or spectacle, a black SUV slipped quietly through the palace gates. The next morning, the palace confirmed that the Duke of Sussex had met privately with his father. The meeting lasted less than an hour, but those who were present described it as deeply emotional. Whatever words were exchanged remained private, yet sources close to both brothers suggested that moment might have marked the beginning of something fragile but hopeful, the first step toward reconciliation. In the days that followed, the tone in the media began to shift, from speculation to reflection. Newspapers ran heartfelt retrospectives on Charles's life, his long years as Prince of Wales, his environmental crusades, his deep love for art and culture. Documentaries replayed familiar scenes, Charles planting trees, comforting flood victims, sketching quietly in his notebooks. The story that emerged wasn't one of a monarch fading into obscurity, but of a man whose lifelong passions had finally found their rightful place in history. He had been, in many ways, ahead of his time, speaking about climate change before it was widely accepted, championing conservation long before it became political, reminding the world of duty and service in an age that often celebrated only freedom. His reign, though short, had depth, and his legacy, rooted in compassion, vision, and endurance, would endure far longer than the crown upon his head. Public sentiment across Britain echoed the same quiet truth: respect. Each evening, candlelit vigils continued outside Buckingham Palace. Choirs gathered to sing hymns that drifted through the cool night air, and Union Jacks flew at half-mast, not by royal order, but out of instinct, a quiet expression of collective respect. Even longtime critics of the monarchy found themselves moved by the stillness, by the quiet courage of a king facing his mortality without spectacle or complaint. For a brief moment, Britain felt united again, not through politics or ceremony, but through empathy. Inside the palace, however, the atmosphere was one of quiet urgency. Behind closed doors, preparations for the inevitable grew more deliberate. Official papers were reviewed, speeches revised, and logistics rehearsed under the delicate title Operation Menai Bridge, the code name for the plans following the king's passing. Yet those closest to Charles were quick to insist that not all hope had faded. "He still laughs," one staff member said. "He reminisces. He tells stories about his childhood, about the gardens, about his mother. Even in decline, he has this way of reminding us where we've come from. That sense of continuity never leaves him." The Archbishop of Canterbury visited often, offering prayers and companionship. On one particularly quiet afternoon, he led a small private service attended only by Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, and Princess Anne. The hymns were sung softly, barely rising above the whisper of the wind outside. After the service, Charles reportedly said, "If my reign ends tomorrow, I'll leave knowing we did our best for this country." It was both a confession and a blessing, the words of a man who had made peace with his purpose. In Parliament, subtle tributes began to appear across party lines. Members of all affiliations spoke with genuine admiration about the king's dedication, humor, and lifelong service. One MP recalled a private audience with Charles. He spoke about architecture and agriculture with the same passion. He cared deeply about the details of life, not just the symbols, but the soil beneath them. It was that humanity, more than his title, that endeared him to the public. As autumn settled over London, the palace released what many believe will be the final official portrait of King Charles III. He sat quietly in his study, sunlight streaming through the window, a faint, serene smile touching his face. On the desk before him rested two framed photographs, one of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and another of his sons as young boys. The image was simple, unadorned, yet profoundly moving. A portrait of a man suspended between generations, between duty and eternity. The photograph became an instant icon, appearing on every front page the next morning beneath headlines like "Grace Until the End." In the days that followed, a deep quiet seemed to settle over the world. Royal engagements were suspended, palace updates grew rare, and Britain entered a hushed vigil. Then, one evening, the palace gates closed earlier than usual, and whispers began to spread. Members of the royal family had been called to Windsor. There was no official statement that night, but by morning, the Prime Minister appeared outside Downing Street, dressed in a dark suit. Her voice was gentle but steady. His Majesty the King remains comfortable and is surrounded by his family. The nation heard what was left unsaid. Across Britain, church bells tolled, not in mourning but in prayer. People paused, in shops, on buses, in offices, to bow their heads or whisper words of hope. It was as if time itself had slowed, holding the country between two eras, the final hours of one king and the quiet rise of another. The monarchy once again stood on the edge of history, its pulse beating in rhythm with the people it had served for generations. And somewhere, inside the stillness of Windsor's ancient halls, a father looked upon his son for the last time, not as a sovereign to his successor, but as a man to the child who would inherit far more than a crown. He would inherit the weight of duty, the dreams of a lifetime, and the love of a nation both men had cherished deeply. It was, in every sense, the most human of farewells.